Good morning. The Hearing Board of the South Coast Air Quality Management District is in session. Today is Thursday, February 6, 2020, and the time is just after 9:10 a.m. We are meeting in the Hearing Board room in Diamond Bar. We have one matter on the calendar for today, and that is the matter of Air Liquide Large Industries US LP, case number 5705-9 for a short variance. And who is representing Air Liquide today?
John Allen from Allen Matkins.
Good morning, Mr. Allen. And who is representing the executive officer this morning?
Daphne Sue.
Good morning, Ms. Sue. Before we begin, I'd like to ask anyone who wishes to testify in today's proceeding to please rise to be sworn in. Please raise your right hand. Do you promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you. Before we start, I'd like to ask whether the parties, either party objects to incorporating the testimony and evidence from the last proceeding, which was the interim variance proceeding in today's hearing.
No objection.
Petitioner does not and appreciates that.
Thank you. And so with that, I'm going to turn to Ms. Verdugo Peralta, who was not present at the last hearing, but I do believe has caught up and viewed the proceeding. Is that correct? Okay. And are you prepared then to hear the matter today?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. Okay. And with that, Mr. Allen, you may begin with your opening.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the board, good morning. We're here today, as Madam Chair has indicated, on the short variance, and I appreciate the opportunity to have incorporated the prior testimony, the prior exhibits, in order to expedite and focus on what I believe are the salient points which the board will want to hear, which is, in the first instance, progress efforts that have been made in the interim since the interim variance was granted. And we've good news, good progress made to report in that regard. Second, to assure the board and provide evidence for the district as well that we have been, petitioner has been complying with the conditions of the variance that were spelled out in the minute order that was issued previously. And then finally, to the extent it needs to be addressed as well, to provide further evidence with respect to financial impact were the short variance not granted. So unless the board requires otherwise, I think we would focus on those three areas and would invite the instructions to the contrary.
That sounds like a good recitation of what we think you should focus on. And the other issue, if it is an issue, I don't know. I know it was raised at the last hearing, which is that since you've only noticed for a short variance, we can only grant, I think I tried to calculate it through March 23rd, because it would be 90 days from when the original ex parte variance was granted. So if that's not possible in the time frame, we would need to address that as well.
Yeah, that will be addressed as part of the progress to date, where we are and so forth. And we will provide testimony to indicate that should be sufficient based on what we have determined. So with that in mind, I conclude my opening remarks.
Thank you. Ms. Sue, your opening.
Good morning. We look forward to hearing about the petitioner's compliance with the current order and also regarding the progress on getting back into compliance and no longer needing the variance. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Allen, you may present your first witness.
Okay. That would be Quentin Cox. Mr. Cox, could you please state and spell your name?
First name is Quentin, Quinton. Last name is Cox, Cox.
And are you testifying under oath?
Yes.
Now, I know you previously testified to that effect, but just briefly, where are you employed?
I'm employed at Air Liquide Large Industries in El Segundo, California.
And what is your current position?
The plant engineer.
And you previously testified in this matter, correct?
Yes, correct.
And you're familiar with the equipment that's involved, the subject of the variance?
Yes, correct.
And the efforts to deal with it?
Yes.
Have you reviewed the minute order?
Yes, I have.
Including the section dealing with the finding of good cause?
Yes.
Does that substantially reflect the facts and circumstances that led to first the emergency variance and then to the interim variance?
Yes, it does.
Okay, so I'm not going to trouble you with a recitation of what a steam methane reformer is, or how the emissions are controlled by a SCR, a selective catalytic reduction unit, or how the efficacy of the SCR is monitored by the CEMS, the continuous emissions monitoring system. I'm going to, instead of focusing on those, ask you to inform us all with respect to what's been done in the interim. But before doing that, and perhaps to assist the board in its appreciation of the complexities involved in achieving repair, I want to introduce into evidence a series of photographs that depict the piece of equipment, which I'm variously going to refer to as an ammonia analyzer, an ammonia laser analyzer, et cetera. And again, this is simply to illustrate the visual image of the document.
Okay, we're going to mark, it looks like it's four back-sided, photographs, and we're going to mark that as Exhibit 7,
Yes, correct.
Exhibit number 7. Thank you.
And again, this is just primarily on the view that a visual image will help the board understand the complexity of the piece of equipment, briefly why it failed. What does that first image show for the benefit of the board, Mr. Cox? What is that?
Yes, the first image shows the former laser gas ammonia analyzer. This is the one that failed.
And I believe you said there were two pieces of this unit, one on one side of the stack and one lined up on the other. Is this the laser unit?
Yeah, so this would be the transceiver side. So this would be the side that actually shoots the laser.
So this thing is way up on the stack above the furnace?
Yes, correct. This is about 100 feet in the air.
And I see a computer in the background. What's that?
That's just the electronic circuitry.
And that's on the ground?
So the stuff that's on the electronic circuitry is actually located at the top of the stack as well.
Okay, and that little computer looks like a laptop computer in the background.
Okay, yeah. So the back is, like, I guess you can say, like, it's a receiving unit, and it's where the signal is sent to. The box in the background is located at ground level.
Okay, and that second image on page 2, it looks like the printout of a photo of the computer screen that's depicted on the first page.
Yes.
And I see it indicates error.
Yes, correct.
So that's the problem.
Yes.
What's that third picture?
Third picture is similar to the first picture. It's just a view from the back. As you can see, this side.
You're indicating to the right there where the
Yes.
wiring is.
Yes, to the wiring. Yeah. So that's similar to the first pictures. It just shows some of the electrical wiring.
And the last photo, what is that unit?
The unit in the back. This is where all of the signals are sent to. And this unit is located at ground level, and it's located within the CEMS cabinet.
Okay, fine. Now, again, we've gone over this, so I'm not going to burden.
Oh,
Sorry?
sorry. Oh, it's in the CEMS cabinet, the continuous emissions and monitoring system.
That's in the control room.
No, well, the CEMS cabinet is actually located out in the field by the stack where the analyzer is.
Understood, okay. And so, again, we've already gone over what happened, the laser failure, et cetera, in connection with the interim variance. So what I want you to do for the benefit of the board and the district is tell us what it is you've done in the interim since that variance was granted. I believe that was January 16, the date it was issued. What have you done before or after, beginning with, I think you indicated a January 14 date. What's been occurring?
So on January 14th, it's a Tuesday before the hearing that we had on the 16th, we did receive a proposal from JDL Design in regards to an ammonia analyzer, and along with the DAS configuration and also the wiring that would be associated with the analyzer.
What is a DAS configuration?
DAS is a data acquisition system.
Okay. And I would like to now introduce a second exhibit.
We're receiving another exhibit, stapled two-page exhibit, and it's entitled JDL Design LLC Engineering Integration Automation. January 4th is the date, and we will mark that as Exhibit 8.
And what is this exactly?
So a little background, JDL is the third-party contractor that works at our site. They do help with a lot of the maintenance and monitoring with the SIMS unit. So they are familiar with our site. And what you have here in front of you is a proposal for a new ammonia analyzer. As well, on the back page, you can see there's another Part B, and it says other charges. And they were also going to help us with the DAS software modifications. They were going to help do the actual install of the analyzer. And they were actually going to help perform operator training as well.
Now, did you immediately accept that proposal?
No, we did not.
And what did you do thereafter?
So on Friday, the day after the hearing, January 17th, we received ammonia analyzer questionnaire forms from Teledyne and Siemens. And at that point, we began to fill out those questionnaire forms. For reference, those questionnaire forms are used by the manufacturers, Teledyne and Siemens, to come up with a solution for us. So they have questions like the dust load, the concentration of the flue gas, flow rates, things of that nature.
Let me be clear that I understand and that the board and the district understand. After you got the JDL proposal, you had sought additional proposals?
Yes, yes.
And Teledyne, did you say?
And Siemens.
And these are other vendors, or are they
Correct.
consultants?
Are there other vendors?
Have you worked with them before?
So Arun Mahabursing, who was a plant manager, he has worked with Teledyne in the past. I personally had not worked with these other companies before.
And did you receive any other quotes from anyone else with respect to the replacement of the NH3 ammonia analyzer?
Yes, on that Friday as well, January 17th, we did also receive a quote from Semtech.
Okay. Me too.
Thanks.
Oh, sorry. Three. You're inundated.
We received a multi-page document from Semtech, and we are going to mark this as Exhibit number 9.
Yes, please. Oh, here, there's two. I don't know. I'm going to need these two.
We also received a multi-page document from Siemens, excuse me, and that will be, Siemens will be Exhibit 10. And we also received a multi-page document from Teledyne Instruments, and Teledyne Instruments will be Exhibit 11.
So to continue your testimony, Mr. Cox, is it correct that as of January 17, you had approximately or exactly 4 proposals?
By the 17th, we only had 2 proposals by
Okay.
that day.
When did you get the additional proposal?
We got the proposal from Teledyne on January 21st, and a proposal from Siemens, I believe, on January 28th.
Okay, and continue then, please. What did you do after the receipt of these proposals?
So yeah, on Monday, I believe January 20th, the plant manager Arun sent off the quotes from Semtech and JDL to the internal air Liquide analyzer technician. He's a gentleman located in Houston, and Arun had previous experience working with him.
And let me just stop you for the record and for clarification. You mentioned the name Arun. Is that Arun Mahabir Singh?
Correct. That is the plant manager.
Can you spell his last name, please?
MAHABIRSINGH.
Thank you. And why was it necessary to send it to those sources? I think you indicated Houston.
Yes. So to be quite honest, Arun and I don't necessarily have the expertise in terms of ammonia analyzers. So we wanted to have somebody else who does have the expertise in analyzers to have them review it and to get their thoughts on what would be our best option.
And those resources were in Houston?
Yes, correct.
Okay. And go ahead and proceed. So that was January 21st. You got us to, which is 5 days minus the weekend, 3 working days or so after the variance has been granted. Continue on. What process then followed?
So on Tuesday, January 21st, that's when we received the quote from Teledyne. I believe John has already given you all
Yes,
the proposal for that. Yep. On Wednesday, January 22nd, we received some responses from Teledyne. We had some questions about their proposal, things about expediting options, warranty, commissioning support, things of that nature. On Friday, January 24th, upon review of each of the 3 quotes that we had at that time, so that includes the Teledyne, the JDL, and the Semtech, we sent it off to the MOC approver, a gentleman named Bill Lindbergh.
And let me stop you right there. What you said MOC, what is that?
So MOC stands for Management of Change, and so anytime we have any changes or do any changes in the plant or in the process, it has to undergo a review, which is what we refer to as the management of change.
And is MOC a process that was developed uniquely for this facility?
Not necessarily uniquely for this facility. It is so we are a CalARP Level 3 program, and then MOC is, I guess you can say, like a tenet of PSM and also
And again,
the RMP.
PSM is?
Process Safety Management. And then it's also a tenet of the RMP, Risk Management Plan. And so it basically allows for multiple people to review any changes that we're making to the process in order to avoid any mistakes being made and avoiding any potential catastrophic failures from occurring.
And there could be problems associated with a defective choice of this particular equipment, is that true?
Absolutely.
Such as?
So, for example, if we were to install an analyzer that didn't have the correct electrical area classification, we do deal with flammable gases, the main one being hydrogen. And so one of the potential things that could occur is if it doesn't have the correct electrical classification, you have any possible buildup of any flammable gas, for example, hydrogen, and it could potentially have a spark or some sort of ignition source. And as you can imagine, that would be very catastrophic for not only our plant, but plant personnel and surrounding individuals.
So you've got us up to January 24th, Friday.
Correct.
And what transpires with the MOC and your approval team?
Yes. So we had a Google Hangout, which is a virtual meeting with the MOC approver, Bill Lindbergh, on Monday, January 27th. He has some concerns about all the quotes in regards to, electrical area classification, how it's going to be wired into our internal system so that the operators can monitor it. He also had questions about the actual wiring from the analyzer to our control room. He basically just brought up a multitude of concerns that we needed to address before we made our final decision.
And that involved a follow-up with the vendors, did it?
Correct.
And, okay, then it's Tuesday.
Okay, so Tuesday, the 28th, I want to say. Yeah, Tuesday, 28th is when we received a quote from Siemens. So now at this point, we have 4 quotes, but I think you all have access to. On the 29th, as a response to some of the concerns that were brought up by the MOC approver, we received a data sheet of the analyzer from JDL. And at that point, we had, based on the availability and the ability to install something before within our variance window, we narrowed it down to Teledyne and JDL, and that gets us to basically through Wednesday. On Thursday, based on the review that we had, we did issue a PO to Teledyne to purchase their analyzer. I believe you all have the quote, as I've mentioned. And so, if you can see on the JDL proposal, on the second page, as I mentioned, Part B, other charges, it mentions DAS software modifications, analyzer installation,
And again, DAS is,
data acquisition system.
what does that mean?
So basically, that's how the data is gathered from the analyzer and is put through the SIMS unit. And also, it explains how we're able to gather the ammonia concentration and incorporate it into our own internal Air Liquide control system. And so, at the time, we were thinking that we would order the Teledyne analyzer, but we will still have JDL help commission the analyzer and do the DAS software modifications. So that was Thursday, what we were going to do. And so in order to confirm that JDL was going to do that, because we were choosing an analyzer that wasn't coming from JDL, we reached out to them and basically asked them, hey, we're going to order this Teledyne analyzer. Will it work for you all? Will you be able to make the necessary modifications to allow it to work for our plant? Is at that point that they informed us that the Teledyne analyzer did not have the ability to perform the daily gas calibration audits, which is it's an EPA standard. And basically, the daily gas calibration audits are where the analyzer performs a zero and span check. It checks for the zero, so for zero concentration of ammonia, then it also goes to the span. For our site, it's 20 ppm. And he informed us that the Teledyne analyzer could not do that.
And again, just to clarify, because I think you previously testified, and this is a little complicated, but this NH3 analyzer has 3 basic operating modes. I believe you indicated that it will analyze the gas, and then to validate that it's working,
That's accurate.
it's literally shut off and run in a zero mode in which it's not passing through the stack and measuring anything.
Correct.
And then to further validate that it's working correctly, it passes through a sample, a blank pre-measured sample, I think you said 20 parts per million.
Yes, correct.
To see if it correctly reads that and if it correctly reads zero. And what you're saying, if I understood you correctly, and I'd like you to clarify, is that the Teledyne bid proposal, which you had accepted, didn't include the capability to do that every day.
Correct.
And you discovered that on Thursday.
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
So then, I'm sorry, I interrupted you. What did you do next?
Oh, no problem. So after that, we went back to Teledyne and basically asked them, could we incorporate the ability to perform those daily gas calibration audits on their analyzer? And on Friday, they informed us that they could not. That wasn't something that they offered, and that what we were looking for was more so a custom solution.
What did you do in response?
So on Monday, Monday, February the 3rd, we issued an emergency PO to JDL to accept the analyzer that they were suggesting, and as well as the Part B of their proposal, which includes the DAS software modifications.
Okay, and at this point, I'm introducing another exhibit, which I'd like the board to mark and accept.
We have a 2-page document, even though the second page really doesn't have anything on it. But and it has the word kite in the upper left-hand corner, so we'll mark that as Exhibit 12, I think we're up to.
Okay, and now, Mr. Cox, this document is a little hard to understand. Can you explain to us what it is?
Yeah, absolutely. So whenever we purchase anything, I won't say anything, but purchase something that's above around at least $1,000, we usually issue a PO. PO stands for purchase order. And usually what we have to do before that, we have to do a PR, which is a purchase requisition. And so you issue a PR, and then that has to be approved before the PO can be issued. And that process can take, even if on a quick basis, it can take maybe a day or two to do that. So we have a workaround, an early key policy, which is issuing an emergency PO. And what all that allows is we're able to get a PO number. We're able to get the purchase order before actually issuing the PR. And so it allows us, if for this specific case, if an emergency comes up and a company needs a PO, because most companies won't do any work without getting a PO first.
That would include JDL.
That would include JDL, yes.
So how do we know JDL accepted this?
So I've had multiple phone conversations with JDL to confirm that they are working on this, and they are actually working on the analyzer and making sure they're following up with the vendor that they're purchasing the analyzer from to make sure that they are actually building it.
And when did you last speak with JDL?
I believe it was Tuesday.
Where are they located?
JDL is, I believe, is located in Long Beach.
Okay. And have they given you assurances that they can meet the timeline?
Yes, they have. Yes, JDL has given us assurances. On the proposal, you'll see on the bottom of the first page of the JDL design, there's two asterisks, and they say add 10% to Section 8 pricing for expedited delivery of 4 weeks. That is the option that we have gone with. So it is being expedited, and I believe that was also one of the conditions of the variance in and of itself.
Is it your understanding then that they can complete the construction of this unit within 4 weeks from February 3rd?
Yes, yes.
Have they given you any indication that that's going to be a problem?
No, they have not. They said they can do it in 4 weeks.
And just to be clear, does that include the delivery of the unit and its installation?
That includes the delivery, and then there will be an additional week for commissioning and getting the unit up and running correctly.
So how long do you need the variance to remain in effect?
So the current estimate, we'll need obviously 4 weeks to get the analyzer built and shipped to our site, and then an additional week for the actual commissioning of the unit.
And you have a fairly high degree of confidence you can do that within 5 to 6 weeks?
Yes, absolutely. So some of the reasons, JDL is a long-term service provider for our site. We have a lot of experience with JDL. It actually works in our favor in the sense that they come to our site on a weekly basis. So that would definitely help in terms of the MOC process and making sure that we're doing everything that needs to be done to make sure that we get this installed in time. JDL has also installed a similar ammonia analyzer at another site here in the LA area. And beyond that, the analyzer that JDL is purchasing is from a company called Furco. You can see on the proposal. This company, Furco, is also located here in California.
That looks like it's under item A.
Yes.
And who is Furco?
Furco is this is another vendor of the ammonia analyzer. It's similar to the other vendors we've reached out to, so similar to the Siemens, Teledyne, Semtech. They're just, I believe they're a smaller company.
Okay, by my estimate, it was about 14 working days from the time of the interim variance, more or less. Why did it take that many days, why did it take that time interval in order for you to identify and select a vendor here?
Mm-hmm. So one of the main things is the ammonia analyzer is a specialized piece of equipment. It's not necessarily something that you can just buy off the shelf. It takes time and effort to evaluate the proposals and the different ones that we got from the different vendors. And one of the bigger reasons is that the MOC process, the management of change process, involves multiple parties, and that process in and of itself takes a lot of time and diligence to make sure that we're installing something that's not only going to satisfy our air permit, but also something that's going to last a very long time.
And you indicated that MOC, management of change, is that correct?
Correct.
Process is driven by a number of regulatory provisions, including CalARP
Yes, correct.
and process safety management, is that the
Yes,
right
yes,
term?
process safety management and RMP, the risk management plan.
Now, has Air Liquide met, you're aware that the variance was granted previously with conditions. Has Air Liquide met those conditions imposed?
Yes, we have.
Are you doing the Draeger tube monitoring?
Yes, so we are still performing the Draeger 2 monitoring once every 8 hours. We still are logging the NOx concentrations and ensuring that they remain below 5 ppm. We are continuing to keep the ammonia injection rate below the 11.45 pounds per hour, which was one of the conditions. And we're also still continuing to monitoring the feed rate into the plant and the reformer firing rate.
Have there been any incidents that require notification for the variance?
No.
Okay. And what about records? Have you kept records to document? I believe that's a requirement as well.
Yes, we do. We have a Google Sheet, which is Google's version of Excel that we are monitoring or keeping track of all the data.
Have you provided the district with access to that information?
Yes, correct. I have provided that data so far to Patrick Lee and John Lockwood.
And it remains your petitioner's position that you're currently in violation of a district rule or district rules or permit provisions, does it not?
Correct.
And that these are due to circumstances beyond your reasonable control?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. With respect to requiring compliance, we'd previously testified that there would be adverse financial impacts. That remains the case?
Yes, that does remain the case.
Have you made any efforts to further quantify those or consider them?
Yes, I know that for in terms of lost sales on a daily basis, it is $44,000 per day, and we do have here our environmental specialist Eric, who can speak a little bit more as to the economical effects.
And you're indicating Eric Kleinschmidt?
Correct.
Yeah, who's seated to your immediate left. And so thus far, compliance with the district rule or the permit provisions that were the subject of this variance are still, they remain impossible.
Correct.
And so the shutting down of the facility as an alternative to the inability to meet compliance or to obtain a variance rather would not have any corresponding economic benefit?
No, it would not.
Have you given consideration to curtailing your operations?
No, we have not. We're confident that curtailing operations would not necessarily, help this issue. And beyond that, we are subject to our product supply agreement with Chevron to meet the maximum hydrogen order rate that they set for us.
Will there be any adverse impact, in your opinion, on air quality if the variance is granted?
Adverse if the variance is not granted?
If it is granted?
Oh, okay.
An adverse impact if the variance is granted?
No, it would no.
And why is
There would be, so there would be no excess emissions during the time frame of the variance. Basically, mainly due to our monitoring that we're continuing to do and things of that nature.
And so your adherence to the permit conditions is such that you're confident you're not going to have excess air emissions were this variance to be granted?
Correct.
Okay. And you're going to continue that monitoring, I assume? Is that correct?
Absolutely.
And you're going to report emission levels and so forth to the district to the extent you're required?
Yes, correct.
Okay. Have you received any complaints from the public regarding the facility under the variance, or even for the last 6 months?
No, sir.
Okay. What about those odors from ammonia? The board had previously inquired at least one member whether there were any complaints with respect to odors, either at the facility or beyond the facility gate.
No, sir. Where the emissions occurs, 100 feet in the air, and beyond that, we're talking about very low concentrations. The most I've seen since I've been here at the site is around 2 to 3 ppm.
So no complaints from the public?
No complaints at all.
Or Chevron employees?
No
Your
complaints.
own employees?
No, sir.
Okay. And have you received any notices of violation from the district in connection with the SCR's operations?
No.
Okay, those are all the questions I have for this witness.
Thank you. Ms. Sue, do you have any questions for Mr. Cox?
Yes, good morning. You said that the facility was performing Draeger tube testing. Can you tell us what the results of the Draeger tube tests are?
Yes, I can. So the Drager tube testing that we've been doing, we have been getting results of roughly 0. We acknowledge that we don't necessarily believe it's been 0 the entire time. The Drager tubes that we have measure a concentration of 0.25 to 3 ppm. And so there is a potential that it is below 0.25, and that wouldn't be something that would be abnormal. It has been in the past. But we have been trying different locations just to verify. I know that having it be 0 can raise some eyebrows. So we did find another location, I want to say a day or two ago. And at that location, we got like 1.2 ppm. So since that has given us the highest value so far, we're going to continue using that location from here on forth.
And what was that location that showed the 1.2
So
ppm?
this specific location was attached to the SIMS cabinet. The SIMS cabinet contains a sample pump, and it basically pumps the gas that's leaving the stack down into the SIMS cabinet, because there's other analyzers beyond the ammonia analyzer. There's a CO analyzer, there's an O2 analyzer, and so you need a sample pump to pump the gas through those analyzers so that it can measure the concentration of those constituents. And so there was like a drain tubing, and we basically took a Drager test from that drain tubing. That's where we got the 1.2 ppm. So we're going to continue using that location.
And I'm sorry, this is, the Drager tube is measuring ammonia slip, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. And who would be installing the new ammonia analyzer?
So it will be, so FERCO will have a technician out to the site, and they will be more so kind of, I don't want to say watchdog, but they will be kind of guiding the work. But there will be our I&E technician from Air Liquide side, and there will also be JDL, who will be actually putting the system in and commissioning it.
Okay, and what hours will this team be working in terms of installing the equipment?
I think in the proposal, I think it's just normal 8-hour days.
Okay, I just wanted to remind you that the order does say that the facility will pay for any overtime labor required. Is there any plan to have them work overtime?
I know right now, just based on proposal, we haven't gotten to those details yet, I'll be quite honest with you, but I'm sure we can do that.
Thank you.
I just want to make sure you realize that there can be no extensions of this variance should you not meet the final date. I just want to make sure you understand that, because legally we could not.
Okay, I understand.
Okay. Anyone have any questions on the board for Mr. Cox? Mr. Balagopalan?
Mr. Cox,
Hello.
I know in the JDL proposal, they, in the section B, other charges, there's a SEMS application and RTU submittal to AQMD.
Oh, here we go.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because John actually mentioned that as well. We won't need that specific line item. Talking about you're talking about the AQMD application fee,
Right.
right? Yeah, I don't believe we will need that line item.
Now, your existing permit condition requires the SEM shall be installed after consultation with the SC-AQMD on the appropriate SEM. Have you reached out to AQMD to verify that this particular SEM is appropriate?
No, I have not yet.
Do you plan to?
Yes, we will have to, yes.
Because it also says it shall submit to the AQMD prior to the installation of the SEM, within 60 days prior to the installation of the SEMs.
Okay.
You know, you're not going to meet that. So for the proposal and the evaluation of the plan of the SEMs. So how do you plan to meet this condition then?
So if it's 60 days, and we're already too short on that, so I think we'll just have to do it as quickly as possible. And I'm not sure exactly what the response will be from AQMD.
But
So I'm not exactly sure what the response will be from AQMD, but
and yeah, and so when do you plan to reach out to AQMD? Have you any time frame?
I will do it as soon as possible, so it could be later on today to reach out to them.
And I know you're going with the FERCO
a unit, do they have their own staff that can install and calibrate and do the measurements and so and make sure it's all installed
Yes,
properly?
yes. So on the, they will have somebody that will be coming out and doing like the field supervision. They will have somebody from FERCO actually come out during the time frame where we're doing the install.
But you're going with JDL to do the installation?
Yes, we're going with JDL because JDL is our main contractor that comes and does the calibrations and whatnot and mini maintenance on our SIMS unit. So,
Okay. No, that's all I had. Thank you.
all right, thank you.
Senator?
On Exhibit 7, on page 2, at the very top of the reading calibration, you said there's an error. How is the error identified with the readings?
You say how does the error verify the readings?
Yeah, yeah. How do you identify the error just with this instrument reading chart?
Yeah, so this reading is actually coming from the Simtech facility when they were actually trying to do the troubleshooting. So this picture was taken after we removed the analyzer and sent it to the Simtech facility. The error that they eventually got down to was that it was a laser failure error. Now, just looking at this, it doesn't necessarily say that, laser failure error, but that's ultimately what the error was. That's what the error came from.
The error?
Yes.
The laser.
Yes, correct.
Okay, fine. You sent work orders out to how many different companies?
So we ended up sending 2. We ultimately had to cancel the one that we sent to Teledyne.
I know you explained why you did, but you sent one to Teledyne, Siemens, and JDL.
Oh, yeah, so we received quotes from all of them. Yes, correct.
And initially, you accepted Teledyne.
Correct.
And but before you would qualify them as a qualified respondent, you went to JDL and say, look and see what Teledyne is providing for us.
Yes.
Well, JDL was the competitor, right?
Yes, yeah, that was the issue. JDL was, although they were doing helping with the commissioning part, they were also a competitor in terms of the bidding because they had their FERCO analyzer that they have familiarity with.
So they rejected Teledyne.
Well, yeah, you can make that argument, yeah. But they brought up the concern that it couldn't do the daily gas calibration audits, and they were still going to do the commissioning if the Teledyne model could do that.
They couldn't do the gas what?
The daily gas calibration audit.
Right, was this part of the work order?
So I didn't on the Teledyne quote. I didn't see any mention of it, and so I honestly it was just it was an oversight on our part. We're rushing. We're trying to get this installed, and that was just.
And JDL in response to the quote, did they specify they could do that?
So the JDL one can, yes, specifically it has the ability to
In
do
their
that.
response, they said they could do that.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
You're
And
correct.
what about on page 2 of Exhibit 8? Page 2. We're looking at installation. You discussed that briefly, but in C, where it said installation, would you reiterate, would you go over that again, please, sir?
So do you want to read what it says right here, the scope?
Yeah, where it says, when you about installing it and having it verified and that there's going to be function operational after installation, they say that will provide turnkey. That means everything going to be done and checked out prior to installation, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and the time estimated for completion of this installation process is how much time is that?
In total, it'll be around 5 weeks.
5 to 8 weeks, I thought you said. Which is okay, whatever, if that satisfies you.
Yes, that will fit us in within the timeline. Yeah, but on the bottom of the JDL proposal, it says escorting factory service engineer. That factory service engineer is referring to the engineer from FERCO.
And they can do all this for $16,000.
Yes. That's the, yes, that's the,
Not including the analyzer cost.
oh, no, I'm sorry, no, not including the analyzer cost. No, that's gonna be around 60 to 70K.
How much?
60 to 70,000. Yeah, because you see on the front page, Section A, price Section A says $57,620.
Yes,
And then
correct.
we did the asterisk option, so we add 10%. So you're looking at, what, like $62,000, roughly.
All right, you be satisfied they can do it?
I'm pretty confident they can do it, yes.
What you said earlier on, but you've been working with JDL for some time
Correct,
at your site,
correct,
correcting your problems.
correct. Yeah,
And yet, initially, you selected that Teledyne.
yes, correct. So one of the concerns that was brought up is with this company, Furco. It's a smaller company. The bigger companies, the Teledynes, the Siemens, and Semtech, they're larger companies, and so the fear was that, we get this system installed, and potentially maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now, if there was another failure, maybe this smaller company may potentially may not be producing this analyzer anymore. And so the concern was, well, we still want to get multiple quotes from, I guess, bigger companies and more established companies. And beyond that, anything that's above $10,000, we have to get, it's an early key policy, we have to get multiple bids. And so,
Thank you.
yeah, no problem.
Ms. Verdugo Peralta.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Cox, what is the expected life of this new piece of equipment?
We've been told 10 to 15 years.
Okay, and everything looks good, everything is going forward. God forbid anything should happen, do you have a plan B?
Plan B would be, we would have to potentially go with, honestly, we don't have a plan B right now. Only thing I can think of that could possibly put us back in compliance by the 24th is trying to reach out to another vendor and see if they have an analyzer that's not necessarily new, but something that we can rent or something like that. That's the only thing that would be possible. If we get a month from now and something catastrophic, one of the things that John mentioned is, what if during transport something happens and it breaks or something like that. You can never plan for those things, but things like that can happen. So if that were to occur, then we would have to try to, I guess, get a used analyzer or a rental of some sort to put us back into compliance.
In the time frame that you've presented, do you have any cushion in there of time, a couple of weeks, or just in case you have to do additional adjustments, or there has to be some type of tweaking of the equipment?
A good question. So we purchased the JDL analyzer on the 3rd. So 4 weeks, let's just say that's puts us to first week of March. And then during that first week of March, we're doing the installation. So if we're given till that 23rd, that just by that time frame, it gives us about 2 weeks in case something were to come up to make any adjustments or any tweaks.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Mr. Balagopalan, you had additional questions?
Mr. Cox, I think you mentioned that JDL had installed the Furco unit at another location?
Correct.
Do you know if they got AQMD approval, or have they mentioned anything about?
That's a good question. They haven't mentioned that specifically to me, no. So, I mean, that's something I could easily ask them.
Right, and, okay, thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions for Mr. Cox? Okay, thank you, Mr. Cox. Mr. Allen, you indicated you had a second witness you wish to present.
Yes, to the extent the board needs additional testimony with respect to financial impact, we brought along Eric Kleinschmidt, who is their environmental specialist, and Mr. Kleinschmidt had previously testified at the prior hearing. So just very briefly, he's under oath, and I would ask him to provide some additional testimony with respect to the financial impact. I think you needed or had requested some I know Mr. Cox has provided some, but I wanted to add further if that will help. So if you don't mind, please state and spell your name, Mr. Kleinschmidt.
Yes, it's Eric Kleinschmidt, ERIC, KLEINSCHMIDT.
And are you testifying under oath?
I am,
And where are you employed?
with Liquide,
And what is your title?
Senior Environmental Specialist,
And you've been with the company how long?
15 years.
Okay. Now, we previously heard evidence from Mr. Cox, and I believe from Mr. Maharbas Singh at the prior hearing on the interim variance with respect to financial impacts. I had asked you previously to take a look at the Chevron product supply agreement pursuant to which Air Liquide provides hydrogen and steam to Chevron, a document which is business proprietary and confidential, but nonetheless has some information that can be shared. Have you done that?
Yes, I have.
And is there, in fact, a penalty provision in there for failure to deliver?
Yes, at paragraph 6.82, there is a penalty clause which calls for a $400,000 penalty for every 1% that Air Liquide falls below the guaranteed annual availability.
So if Air Liquide failed to deliver hydrogen, they could, in theory, get hit for $400,000 as a penalty.
Every $400,000 for every 1% below the quota.
So there could be multiple hits.
Yes,
And is there a cap on that?
1.4 million per year.
Okay, that's all the questions I had.
Ms. Sue, any questions on that?
No questions.
I had just one question. You said that was based on annual?
Yes, that is per year.
Okay, so during the time from now until March 23rd, do you have any indication that you would fall below the annual if you were not to produce any hydrogen or steam during that time?
Yes, if we were unable to produce any hydrogen or steam during this time, we would fall below the guaranteed annual availability.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Mr. Balagopal.
Mr. Kleinschmidt, is it your responsibility to look into the permitting and certification of the SEMS?
It is.
So have you reached out to any staff at AQMD regarding the certification?
We have not yet.
And do you have a specific contact that,
We don't have a specific contact yet,
okay.
but we are aware the district is seeking volunteers for certification test case for certification of ammonia SEMS.
And so is your plan to volunteer your site?
Yes,
for
it
the
is.
certification? So that tells me that AQMD has not come up with a set protocol or procedures for certification?
Not yet.
Not yet, so, okay. All right, thank you.
Senator.
In your petition, sir, you shared the information that it would be $45,000 income per day and $20,000 for restart if you had to shut down, correct?
Yes.
But you also mentioned that it was just $75,000 for minimum penalty. Now you say something about $400,000?
Yes, $400,000 is the annualized penalty due to Chevron. That's above and beyond any lost sales.
So that's like $75,000 minimum, no matter if it's 1 day, 2 days, 3 days?
I'm not sure the origin of the
Because the
$75,000 number.
The petition is that you would lose $75,000 minimum penalty for Chevron. How many days that would you have to lose before it's up to $75,000?
I believe $75,000 would be the lost sales, not the penalty due to Chevron.
Can you just, I'm sorry, Senator, can you just remind us what page in the petition that is? Oh, I see. It's on page 8 of the petition.
But it was in the original.
It states in the second paragraph, last sentence, the petitioner would also be liable to Chevron USA for penalties of $75,000 or more. Is that the same penalties you're testifying are actually $400,000?
Yes,
for?
it's significantly more than $75,000.
Do you want to change that number?
Well, it's $400,000 for every 1%. 75,000 being approximately 0.2 of that percent, or about 1 day's production.
But even worse than that, more severe, that if you didn't provide, if Chevron was not producing any gas, because they don't get information from you, then they would lose money there, and the public would be paying more money because the price of gas would go up. Is that not correct?
That is my belief, yes. Our hydrant is a sole source, or our plant is a sole source of hydrogen for Chevron's ISOMAX unit. Without that, Chevron's gasoline output is pretty significantly affected.
So Chevron doesn't give you, they don't give you an estimate of what the loss might be over a period of time.
They do not.
Do you request it?
They consider that confidential information.
Well, they don't tell me. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Allen, any other witnesses?
No.
Okay. Ms. Sue, did you wish to present any witnesses?
I did not, but can I request a short break, given that Mr. Cox had testified possibly measuring at a different location than the inlet, and that would change one of the conditions? I wanted to discuss that with the petitioner.
Yes, let's do that. Let's take a 15-minute break, and we'll be back at 10:25, unless you need additional time, and just let us know at that time. Okay, we're off the record.
At 10 what? 10:25. Oh, 25.
We're back on the record. Ms. Sue, did you,
Yes, we have suggested language.
okay.
So for the current condition 4, the parties discussed and agreed to changing that language to petitioner shall conduct Draeger tube testing for ammonia slip in sample gas at the SIMS cabinet, and the rest will remain the same, the 3 times a day, approximately every 8 hours.
I'm sorry, Mr. Could you repeat that?
Sure. So just the beginning of the first part of the first sentence in condition 4 of the current minute order, it shall read instead, petitioner shall conduct Draeger tube testing for ammonia. Petitioner shall conduct Draeger tube testing for ammonia slip in sample gas at the SIMS cabinet. And the rest of that condition 4 shall remain the same, starting with 3 times a day. Thank you.
And before it said at the inlet of the stack, or the, okay, so that's changing that. Okay. Did you wish to present any witnesses, Ms. Sue?
No, I do not.
Okay. Is there any member of the public who wishes to be heard today? And I see none. Mr. Allen, if you'd like to give a closing statement.
Yes, just very briefly, we do believe that the failure of the monitoring device here was unexpected. The failure could not have been anticipated, and we hope that the board concurs, as it did previously, with respect to the emergency and the interim variance. With respect to the new unit, I think the testimony, I hope, is compelling. There have been 4 proposals that were solicited, and each one was vetted first by the plant personnel, then by the headquarters staff, and then by the MOC, Management of Change process, somewhat overlapping, somewhat concurrent. The process it's necessarily deliberative because of the unique nature of the unit being replaced, the potential for unexpected adverse consequences if the right decision isn't made. So what we're hoping that we've made that and explained that adequate use and timely use was made of the opportunity afforded under the interim variance. Now the replacement unit has been ordered. It's been ordered on an expedited basis. What we've heard here is 4 weeks of fabrication from February 3rd, a week or thereafter, perhaps a week and a half, a week, 2 more to calibrate, do the shakedown. In the interval, no resulting increase in any air emissions, continued adherence to the variance conditions is modified, perfectly acceptable. So we hope that the relief requested can be granted, particularly with respect to Section D 82.2. That's the text that addresses the operative requirement that was pointed out with respect to the SEMS, including the requirements for the 60-day consultation. We need that variance from that provision for all the reasons we hope we've demonstrated, and that's the extent of my closing.
Thank you, Ms. Sue. Your closing?
Good morning. The conditions help ensure and assure the district and the public that the facility will continue to be below its emissions limits. I also want to take this opportunity to remind the facility that they are to pay for any overtime labor required, so repair replacement work can be done as expeditiously as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Board members, would you like to begin, Mr. Ball? Or did you have a question?
Yeah. I just had a question for Ms. Sue. Do you see a need to put a condition that they should consult with the AQMD staff on the SEMS and start the consultation?
At this time, I don't feel that it's necessary.
Okay. Because that is a permit condition that they do that. So, I mean, we're giving a variance from that portion on the 60 days, but to to not consult AQMD staff because they are the ones who will be finally certifying it if and when they do it.
I'm not quite sure I
well-
understand your question.
The SEMS, my understanding is the ammonia SEM has not been, the AQMD has not developed a protocol yet. They're looking for host site. And I think we heard testimony, Mr. Eric, that they are willing to offer their site as a test site. But they haven't initiated any discussion with staff from AQMD. And like,
I think that's something we can do separate and apart from this variance because, so I think it's not necessary to put this as a condition.
okay.
Would you like to begin discussion of the
Sure.
the
No,
findings?
yeah, I think I'm a little concerned, the fact that they have not reached out to AQMD staff on the SEMS installation because that's thing you have to do anyway. And I know the AQMD is looking for a host site, and I'm glad hopefully you'll offer your site as a host site for them to do the demonstration, because my understanding is the ammonia SEMS, there are only a few facilities who have installed it for, reasons of making sure that their usage of ammonia and so forth is not high. But it's not a requirement yet in AQMD rules to install ammonia SEM. So, but some facilities had it in place, so that's what's codified into the permit. But there's a requirement that in the current permit, which we're giving a variance from, they have, 60 days prior to the installation to get it approved by the AQMD. The catch on the other side is they don't have my understanding, they don't have a proper protocol yet and a method to certify the SEM. So any effort that your willingness to participate as a host site will help in the development of that protocol. And understanding more how the ammonia SEMs work, and so that can be something that, as Ms. Sue said, something can be done outside the variance. So hopefully that's something that that will be taken seriously, and that you will initiate as soon as possible contact with the SCAQMD staff who's responsible and is looking for a host site to do the evaluation and come up with a protocol and test methods and so forth.
Okay. Would you like to begin the discussion of the findings for the short variance, or would someone else like to begin?
Yeah, I can do that. I think. Yes, I think we established as in the interim variance that the 6 findings that we also know they've been violation of a permit condition D82.2 because they don't the SEM unit is not in operation for ammonia monitoring. And let me see, make sure if I got that right. Which permit number it is?
It's D82.2.
Yeah, and so they're in violation of that section of the rule. And specifically, they've mentioned Rule 203B, 2004 F1, and 3002 C1, which we have established that they'll be in violation of. So, and that's why they need the variance. And it's beyond, as Mr. Allen mentioned, it was beyond the control because it happened suddenly and they didn't expect it. It's been operating for several years. And unfortunately, I think the last testimony we heard before, they got it from a vendor overseas, and so they're no longer supporting this type of the laser, or they've gone out of business, so forth. So it is beyond their control to very quickly fix it. Also, so I think the steps they've taken, looking at different, and it's the purchase policy anyway, looking at different vendors and selecting the best one that they hope will fulfill the requirement to do the monitoring of the SEMs. And so it is beyond the reasonable control. The closing and taking would be without a corresponding benefit, as we had indicated before, and as Mr. Cox also said, they don't see any excess emission during this period. They've been monitoring as per the interim conditions, using Draeger tube while it's qualitative. It's not very accurate, but still, I think they did and I think as Mr. Cox said, showing 0 reading shows that something's wrong, so they did find a better, more appropriate location, and they're getting some readings, 1.2 ppm, so that shows that the ammonia is below the 5 ppm, hopefully, with the injection rate that they're maintaining as part of the condition of 11.45 pounds per hour of ammonia injection. And then the good part of it is the NOx SEMS is still in operation, and it's monitoring the NOx emission. And the ultimate aim of the ammonia injection in the SEMS is to ensure that the NOx standards are met. So that's been met. So they have looked at giving consideration to curtailing operation, but in the situation they have a agreement with Chevron to supply hydrogen. So, and even curtailing it will startup and shutdown will probably have more excess emissions than operating it without any excess emission during this period. So, and with by meeting those condition in the interim variance, they are doing the maximum extent feasible to reduce excess emission. So, and they also, the condition requires for the sixth finding that they will monitor. So they conditions the intervariance to continue to monitor until the SEMS unit for the ammonia is installed and in operational. So I think based on that, I think we can make the 6 findings.
I agree. I also would just add, when we're doing the balancing of the impact to the environment, which we're assuming is 0 excess emissions of ammonia versus the taking. And we had received testimony today, not only further testimony with regard to the 44,000 or so per day that they lose in sales, but also that there is a penalty clause in the Chevron agreement with regard to the steam and hydrogen supply, which could which could be about $400,000 for every 1% that they fall short for the year. That's right. And in the time, and we specifically asked that in the time between now and when they could be in compliance by the end of March 23rd, would they fall short by 1%? And the answer was yes. So that's very significant versus the no excess emissions that are anticipated. Also, I had one question. The 60-day requirement with regard to the SEM certification, we're also considering that as part of the variance too, correct? Is that 82.1?
The 82.2.
0.2. Oh, it is under 82.2.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I missed that. Okay, so it's all covered in 82.2. So we're doing it from the requirement for, just to be clear, from the requirement for the ammonia SEMS and also from the 60-day certification. Okay. Anyone else have any thoughts on discussion? Ms. Verdugo-Peralta.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also think that we can find for the petitioner for this variance. I was very impressed with the fact that you went out to 4 vendors to get quotes and to get specifics on how they could accommodate you, and to go into the details and find out which ones really couldn't, and that I'm sure was not easy to do. And the fact that when we're looking at what the penalties would be, it's not just the penalties that would be monetary. It's also the fact that you supply Chevron with hydrogen for them to be able to manufacture the fuel that the consumers use, and ultimately it would come back to us. That if this didn't go through, you were not able to produce that hydrogen, they would not be able to produce the fuels that the public uses, and ultimately that would raise the price of gasoline. So that is also in the back of my mind. But for the most part, I think that your due diligence about getting all 4 quotes, to go over them, make sure that it's going to be adequate for you, that it's going to be a piece of equipment that's going to last you 10 to 15 years, hopefully, if not longer. I think that's a positive thing. So I vote for that.
Thank you. Any other thoughts before a motion? Senator?
When the failure occurred, it was December 17th, 2019. Since that period of time, the petition has been proactive in identifying the problem and trying to get it fix the problem as quickly as possible. They contacted a number of vendors, submitted a work order, and they got a response from 3 of them at least anyway, and have so far selected JDL as the company that would fix the problem. They have a long-standing reputation with the petitioner, and a lot of confidence is with that company, large, big company. And the expectation is that they'll be around for a while. Notwithstanding the expected life of the analyzer, 15 years or whatever the case may be, if they should show any failure between now and then, of course, the big company will be still operating, can fix it. They had another failure, which I asked you about on that printout, what the failure was. And in the petition, you did say it was the internal laser failure, and that that's one of the things they have to fix, I would imagine. All right, thank you, sir, and I support your effort.
Yes. Thank you. Dr. Bernstein?
I echo the comments from my colleagues on the dais. I believe that 6 findings have been made. It appears to me that the petitioner has been in compliance with the conditions set forth in a minute order and has, in my opinion, done his due diligence and worked in the public good to get this rectified as expeditiously as possible. And so I again feel that we've made the 6 findings to grant the short variance. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Balagopalan, do you wish to make a motion?
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you. In the matter of Air Liquide, I'm sorry, I get the right name here. Yeah. Pull it up. Just give me a second, please.
Take a moment, take a moment.
I'll pull that up. Got it buried somewhere. Yes, in the matter of Air Liquide, Large Industry US LP, located at 324 West El Segundo Boulevard in El Segundo, for case number 5705-9, I move that we grant a short variance commencing today and continuing through March 23rd, 2020, from the rules and subsection that has been that is in the minute order for the interim variance, specifically Rule 203B, 2004 F1 and 3002 C1, which actually, and 2004 F1 covers condition number D82.2 specific. That's a specific one that they are not meeting by having the ammonia SEMSAR operation. And the condition of the variance shall be as forth as set in the interim minute order, except for the change to condition number 4 that Ms. Sue articulated. I think we have that on the record. Madam Clerk, do I need to read? Oh, you have that, okay. And during this period, there's no excess emission, so potentially there's no excess emission fees.
Thank you. I second that motion. Is there a discussion on the motion? Senator, how do you vote? Dr. Bernstein, how do you vote?
Aye.
Ms. Verdugo-Peralta, how do you vote?
Aye.
I vote yes. How do you vote, Ms. Balagopalan?
Yes.
We vote 5-0. Motion passes. Thank you and good luck. Oh, sorry.
Can I make a comment?
Yes.
Now
yes,
that
one
it's over,
comment.
I think at the last hearing, I just wanted to bring to Mr. Cox and Mr. Kleinschmidt attention 2004 Rule 2004 on the breakdown provision. I think it was stated that, you got 24 hours to do the breakdown. If you look at 2004, I think it's F1 probably, it's an hour, or when the timeline is different, and 24 hours is when you'll be out of compliance, and then you have to file for the emergency variance. So I suggest for the future reference, you look carefully at Rule 2004 as far as the timeline when you have to report a breakdown and when you have to file for the interim variance, for the emergency variance.
Thank you for that, Mr. Balagopalan. And good luck getting it done by March 23rd. It sounds like you will. Any other business, board members? We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.